Check. Test. Testing. Sound. Check, check. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Hello, sound. Mic test. Check. Testing. Hey, mic test. 1, 2, 3. Hello, sound. Mic test. Check. Sound. Check. Testing. Hello, mic test. 1, 2, 3. Hello, sound. Check. Test. 1, 2, 3. Hello, sound. Mic test. Check. Sound. Check. Testing. Hello, mic test. 1, 2, 3. Hello, sound. Check. Test. 1, 2, 3. Hello, sound. Mic test. Check. Sound. Check. Testing. Hello. Check. Testing. Hello, mic test. Sound testing. Sound check. Check. Hey, hello, mic testing. 1, 2, 3. Hello, sound check.
Naririnig namin sound check. Hindi kaya sound check yun? Oh, che. Oh, che lang, che.
Okay na? Okay na. Hello, mic. Hello. Hello.
Bayang magiliw, pelas ang sinanganan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupit, di ka pasisiin. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bukaw, may dilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal, ang kislap ng mata. Bayang magiliw. magiliw, pelos ang sinanganan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupit, di ka pasisiin. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bukaw, may dilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagdiningning, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng walhating pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya na pag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Check, check, check. Hey, sound check. 1, 2, 3. Sound check, sound check. 1, 2, 3. Hey, sound check. Hey, sound check. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Hey, check. 1, 2. Hey, sound check. 1, 2, 3. Sound check, check, check. Hey, sound check. 1, 2, 3. Sound check. Hello, hello, sound check. 1, 2, 3. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our candidate for this event. Hey, sound check, 1, 2, 3. Sound check, sound check. Hello, sir. Yes, sir. Tabingi daw yung camera, sir. Sige. Yung audio, sir, okay naman. Hello, sound check. Ayan, ina-adjust ni Sir Glenn, sir. Sir, yung audio okay naman? Good evening. Good evening. My name is Jake D. Guzman. I'm one of the professor of leadership here at the AteneodeManila Graduate School of Business. Welcome to our leadership forum, Building a Winning Team. Tonight happens in a time of coronavirus. As a community, let us take some precautionary. Hello. Check, 1, 2. Yan, sir. Yan, medyo pantay na. We hope that you wash your hand with soap or other alcohol outside before walking into the... sige, sir. Ito na. Sir, yan. Yan. Yes, sir. Yung audio okay na? O magsalita pa ako? Okay, sige. Thank you, sir. Hey. To introduce and welcome our guest speaker, I'd like to call on our Dean at the Ateneo Graduate School of Business. My name is Jake D. Guzman. I'm one of the professor of leadership here at the Ateneo Graduate School of Business.
Hi, good evening. We'll start in a few minutes. If you're seated somewhere in the back, can you kindly take up the seats closer to the front so everybody who's sort of stuck in traffic can easily come in? So, so if you're somewhere in the back, kindly find seats in the front. Please rise for the Philippine National Anthem.
Bayang magiliw, pelos ang sinanganan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisiin. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bukaw, may nilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagdiningning, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng walhating pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang hinigaya na pag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Please remain standing for our opening prayer.
In the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear Lord, our Father, we thank you for gathering us here today for this forum. We are grateful that you know each of us by name, that you have led us here in a community of listeners in a conversation, ready for the insights of the panelists and moderators. We open our hearts and minds. We seek your presence, that you send your Holy Spirit to animate us tonight. Fill our lives with your love and companionship. Fill our conversations with your grace and wisdom. Fill this forum with a light and a deeper understanding of leadership. These we ask for your greater glory through Christ our Lord. Amen. Let us pray to the first leaders of the Society of Jesus to inspire us. Saint Ignatius of Loyola, pray for us. Saint Francis Xavier, pray for us. Saint Peter Faber, Saint Aloysius Gonzaga, Saint John Berkmans, Saint Robert Bellarmine, pray for us. In the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Please take your seats. If you're just coming in, try to sit as close to the stage as you can so that we can leave the back empty for people coming in a little later. Good evening. My name is Jake de Guzman. I'm one of the professors of leadership here at the Ateneo Graduate School of Business. Welcome to our leadership forum, Building a Winning Team with Coach Tab Baldwin. Tonight happens in a time of COVID-19. So as a community, let's take some precautions so we can take from tonight lessons on leadership, building teams. First, the auditorium and amphitheater were disinfected before we all came in. Second, we hope you washed your hands with soap, or there's alcohol outside if you need to disinfect your own hands. Please cover your mouth or wear a mask if you feel like coughing, even if you're very close to the person you're seated beside. And as we leave the auditorium, we encourage you to use the alcohol dispensers again. To introduce and welcome our guest speaker, I'd like to call on our Dean of the at the Ateneo Graduate School of Business, Dean Rudy Ang.
Actually, I won't be introducing our main speaker since he needs no introduction. I'd like to introduce the forum to you. The Jesuits have, for as long as there have been Jesuit schools, Jesuits have been involved in sports because our educational philosophy is tied to the idea of a healthy mind in a healthy body. And sports is felt to be is an area that can help very much in the formation of values in the young. So Jesuits, Jesuit education, sports. It's also a great recruitment tool. In the early 2000s, when championships were hard to come by, applications to the college jumped 20% every time we won a championship. Today, people have gotten so used to winning championships that we have perhaps not had that kind of bump in applications anymore, but certainly in the past, huge impact on recruitment. In business, we often use sports analogies, no? So our business literature is full of terms like team player, carry the ball, cover all your bases, level the playing field. All these sports metaphors and analogies come into our conversation in business. But if you Googled sports metaphors in business, I think you'll find, as I did, to my surprise, there are as many articles written about why sports is not a good analogy for business as articles about what we can learn about business from sports. Arguments. First, the idea of winning is different in business as in sports. In sports, only one can be a winner, and oftentimes the team has to focus on the opponent. In business, the most successful companies are those who can grow the market so that we can all be winners. In business, we should not focus on the competition alone, but focus on the customer. In sports and in business, the dynamics of teamwork and talent are different. It is said that in sports, because the team is together for such a short period of time, the planning horizon is shorter. And for business, we must take a long-term view in planning. In sports, time is always of the essence, they say, and speed matters. No one values a runner who stops to think or the player who takes a timeout for reflection. These are not my words. These are words from articles written about why sports is not a good analogy for business. But in this article in the Harvard Business Review that said why sports is not a good analogy for business, he said, if you really look at companies that are sustained and successful over time, their focus is really different from the focus of a sports team. Their focus is building a good organization and making the pieces fit together, making sure everybody's aligned and motivated. A singular focus on beating the competition often does more harm than good. But then when I read that, as an argument why sports is not a good analogy for business, then I said, but isn't that the kind of organization that Coach Tab has been trying to put together on our team? An organization where the focus is building the organization and making the pieces fit together, making sure everyone is aligned and motivated. And so the exception disproves the rule, perhaps precisely because Coach Tab is this kind of coach. He makes an excellent speaker for us today about things we can learn from sports and apply to business. His approach is atypical, more sophisticated, dare I say more enlightened than most other coaches. And, I attend many of these talks in the graduate school, but very few have excited me as much as this one. And I'm looking forward to gaining insights and food for thought from tonight's conversations with Coach Tab. Welcome everyone to the Graduate School of Business, and thank you, Coach Tab, for accepting to be our speaker today.
You want to borrow mine?
May I borrow yours? Tonight's
Well done.
format is really a set of conversations. So welcome, Coach Tab.
Thank you.
Young and I will ask a few questions to set the tone, then we'll open up the conversation to the larger audience, both here in the amphitheater. If you have, I highly encourage you to prepare your questions ahead. If you're shy off the mic or you're in the amphitheater and can't get to the mic, please go to sli.do, post your questions. There's a code and you can post your questions and Young and I can see them and go through them and ask the questions for you. We promise that both rooms here and there will have an equal chance to ask Coach Tab their questions. So let's get started. Pointed question immediately. If I could only ask one question, I would ask this. When you look at the significant experiences of your life, what would you point to as the major influences that have affected and informed your coaching style?
Well, there were some that certainly would be people, and there were others that would be occasions or processes. I would obviously start out by pointing to my parents. My father was a basketball coach. I've often said about my dad that when he was around, old school was young school. You know, Dad was born in 1910, so he was a young adult during the Depression, and that certainly formed a lot of his character and a lot of his methodologies. We all knew Dad as a basketball coach, but he would never say that. He was a school teacher, and he never liked to be called coach. He wanted to be called Mr. Baldwin and Sir, and so I even called him Sir probably more than I called him Dad. He was a very, very strict disciplinarian. He believed in structure. But more than anything else, as I grew up and left the nest and, you know, confronted life, I realized that what my dad really loved was young people. What he really saw was his vocation was molding character in young people. And for a long time, he failed with me. You know, I was a guy that, you know, was a young man right after the 60s, the revolution of that era, and you know, the world was an open oyster. I was well educated. I didn't have many limitations on my thinking or on what my opportunities might be. And so he tried to, more than guide me, he tried to regulate me into young adulthood. And so when I graduated from high school, I wanted to be a basketball player, and he literally said no. It wasn't a discussion, it wasn't a question, it's the way he was. And you didn't argue with him. He was a tough taskmaster. So he gave me two choices. He said, you can either go to one of the military academies, which 3 of my 4 older brothers did, and the other one went in the Green Beret. Or he said, you can go to an academic institution, but you won't play basketball. And so I went off to Notre Dame, not really having a significant interest in university, to be honest. I was a good student, but I wasn't a hungry student. And so he knew that. And so the question was, what would I do at Notre Dame? And so he told me, go into accounting. So I went into accounting. And I was about as enthusiastic an accountant as I was about going to university in the first place. So I spent more time at Notre Dame playing basketball in the rec center, and got my degree, and then I wanted to coach, but he said no, still at the age of 23, still telling me what to do. And so off I went to Chicago to work for a Big 8 accounting firm, which was then Touche Ross, now Deloitte Touche Tomatsu. And after about 18 months, at the age of 25, I finally said, you know what, I think I'm going to do something that I want to do. And through some pretty heavy infighting with my dad, I finally became a coach. And there were rough early days in my coaching career. There was a period when I coached in Auckland in 1990 where I was living in my office, literally, and I was eating at the bakery across the street from my office was in the stadium, so I was eating at the bakery across the street, and I would go over there at 4 p.m. every day because that's when the bakery closed, and it was Mrs. Bumblebee's bakery, and she would say, I have a couple of muffins and a sausage roll for you. Good day for me, a couple of muffins and a sausage roll. So that was a very impressionable time on me because I never doubted where I was going. And it's still the same place that I'm going now, and that is to the next practice. I didn't have those visions of grandeur of coaching in the NBA or, you know, coaching national teams. My passion for the game is such that the next practice was always enough for me. But the other occasional thing that would have certainly formulated many of the decisions I've made in my coaching career was failure. I think I counted the other day, I was doing another talk with some mediators like this, and the question was, how many times have you been fired? And I think people out there would have been expecting 0, or, you know, maybe some idiots fired me 1 time. I think it's 8. And through varying circumstances, and there are probably more coming. You know, this is the life of a coach. And especially now that my philosophy has evolved, as Dean Rudy alluded to, away from winning and more into the processes of developing basketball players. People want to win. The Ateneo alumni want to win. My bosses want to win. And everybody out there doesn't care whether I develop players or not, my opponents or my supporters. My opponents just want me to lose. And so it's a very black and white landscape for most people. And I think when we tend to look outside the areas of expertise in our lives, we tend to see most things as black and white. And yet if you look at your own life, there's very little that is black and white. So in each one of these failings, each one of these firings, there was time for reflection. There was opportunity for growth. And, you know, after the arrogance of youth, I started to realize that there were valid reasons. Sometimes there were valid reasons to fail. But there was almost always valid reasons for the organizations to move on. And so that was very inspirational to me. It might sound like an unusual word to describe a firing, but it was very inspirational because I was inspired to try and make sure it didn't happen the next time, and to patch up the weaknesses, and to continue to work on the product of myself. Because if there's one thing that we have to offer in this life, it is a perfect product. Each one of us is a perfect product. That's what God made. And it is us who discovers the imperfections of our own lives. So it's up to us to continue to try to eradicate those imperfections in our lives, and that's a never-ending process because none of us will ever quite achieve Jesus-like status, and yet none of us should ever stop trying.
You were talking about passion, discipline, even transformation through failure, and figuring it out over a lifetime or decades, figuring it out. How does that come into how you approach building teams?
It's very much the same. I really appreciated your words, Dean Rudy, about how sports, and I've often thought this, is not necessarily a great model for business, because as a oftentimes or sometimes celebrated sports person, I'm asked into these forums to speak or to comment on that very thing. You know, what are the crossovers in sports and business? And I struggle with that sometimes. But certainly I believe that as I've gone through my coaching career, I've learned much more and grown to appreciate how I can learn from business, how I can learn from institutionalization. You know, how institutions seek to be successful. And I think that it's in the last, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but 20 to 25 years, much of the focus has gone off of bottom line results and much of the focus has gone on to processes. And yet that's very hard to maintain that because we live in a world that wants gratification. It wants the gratification of trophies and monetary reward and status and success. And this doesn't come from processes. This comes from results. And so, you know, to have the strength of character yourself in what you do to stay focused on processes is more than just an idea. it's a daily discipline. And, you know, this is what we have sought to do. So, you know, we have looked for a formula at Ateneo that would allow us to genuinely go to work every day and clearly be focused on processes. And you know, what we settled upon about 3.5 years ago was our players, ironically. And you would think, you know, why ironically? Because you would think it's normal to focus on your players. Well, no, it isn't. The check doesn't come because of your players. The check comes because of your win-loss record. So we had to establish disciplines in our coaching staff about staying focused. We had to eliminate any discussion of championships. We never discussed that, ever. We had to eliminate any discussion of winning. We never discussed that, ever. And we had to keep the discipline to keep all of our focus, all of our attention, all of our expertise on the very thing that sport was designed for in the first place, and that was to elevate the health of the individual. And so what is the health of the individual for a young man, in our case, who has a passion and a desire and a dream to be a professional basketball player? Well, that is to grow them into a professional basketball player. So we stay clearly focused on that, and we do not waver from that. And so to put that into specific terms, when we go to practice from the end of January until the beginning of June, we don't run offenses. We don't have scrimmages. We work on fundamentals. We work on concepts. We work on understanding the game of basketball. We work on decision making. We work on breaking the game down to its elemental pieces, and we teach that. And I think it's appropriate because after spending about 35 years coaching professionally, I now am a teacher. I work at a collegiate institution. I work at an academic institution. It wasn't something I sought, but since I'm there, you know, I think I should do it appropriately. So this is where we have gone, and it seems to have borne fruit, and even kept the alumni and the fans of the school happy because the results are there. But I believe, honestly, the second we begin to get carried away with those results will be the second that we start to lose them.
It seems like there was a big strategic thought whittled down to daily practice. This is what we do, this is what we stand for, based on the strategy. And it's really a balance of, I suppose, character formation, building players and people, and not just winning trophies. How do you balance that? And what do you do in practice? What do you affirm? What do you coach? What do you discipline?
Well, it's, first of all, I'll say it's very difficult. This is a difficult style of coaching, and I am blessed, but we are blessed as a university to have, you know, 8 wonderful assistant coaches. Outstanding coaches in their own right, extremely dedicated Ateneans, apart from Alton Lister, who, you know, is our NBA, played 17 years in the NBA and works with our big men. All the rest of the assistant coaches are Ateneans. And so they're passionate about their job. And they do their job according to what we now all believe is the right way. And so, you know, you ask, what do we do? Well, unique, I don't know if it's quite unique, but rare, I would say it's definitely rare. So if you walk into, and you're all welcome, we don't close our practices. We've even invited the LaSalle coaching staff. You see how I stutter when I try to say LaSalle. We've even invited all of our competitors' coaching staffs, not, you know, formally, but we've said we're open. Come in. You want to see our practice? We hide nothing. And if you were to walk in the gym when we're practicing, you would see players spread out all over the Morrow floor, working at different baskets, working on different skills, working on understanding different concepts. You'd see a tremendous amount of coaching and talking going on. And you would see very, very little of what you might think is basketball, because there's no running up and down the floor, there's no patterns being run. And so literally over here we're working on, and not just passing, we're working on passing strength at one area, so we use heavy basketballs. In another area, we're working on passing accuracy. So all the different ways you might throw a pass, we have a taped square on the wall, and your job is to hit the square. We don't work on shooting, we work on footwork, because without footwork, you can't be a good shooter. We don't just work on dribbling, we work on dynamic ball handling and stationary ball handling, because our number one goal for our basketball players is to be able to handle a basketball without thinking about the basketball. So if they have to look at it, obviously they have to think about it. So, you know, we have very, very detailed and specific goals aligned with many, many fundamental elements of the game of basketball. And if you did walk into our practice, probably within 15, 20 minutes, you'd be extremely bored. And so are our players. Because repetition, and irrespective of the boredom element, we don't care. This is where the disciplines come in. Repetition, when you're talking about fundamentals, is the only way to reinforce one of my core philosophies. And so if if you're writing something down or recording something, here's a core philosophy for you. Every single one of you every day gets up in the morning, and the first thing you do is habitual. Now, I don't know what that is. It might be to put your slippers on. It might be to go brush your teeth. It might be to drink a glass of water. It might be to kick your dog. I don't know. Take him for a walk. But it's habitual. And ask yourselves how many things you do every day that are not habitual. And then ask yourself, do you have any bad habits? And we're all going to say yes. And then ask yourself one further question. Would you like to change those bad habits into good habits? Of course you would. Why don't you? Because it's extremely difficult. Extremely difficult. So we believe that under the pressure of a basketball game, our players are going to do one thing. Under the pressure of going into a corporate environment where your bosses has expectations of you, our players are going to do one thing. They're going to do what their habits dictate that they do. We want to change those habits. And the only way you can do that is through significant repetition of doing the things the right way and not allowing them to then go back and do them the wrong way. Because as soon as you go back to your bad habits, you then reinforce what you don't want to do. And the last thing that we do, which is probably rare, again, but probably many coaches would say it's not rare, but they'd be wrong. We do a tremendous amount of messaging. So we have core messages. And I think probably most of you, once you, or if you already do work in the corporate world, there'll be a corporate manual, and within the corporate manual there will be core principles for that corporation. And those are messages, and those are messages that you're supposed to live by. Well, we have those very much within our environment. And those core messages, we reaffirm those regularly. Why? Because the concept team, somebody try and define team. You'll struggle. If you try to define team, you might say sports. Well, you're wrong, because many, many groups operate as a team. Some families do. Some companies do. Some charities do. So you might say, well, a group of people who work together to achieve a common goal. Was that really a team? Here's what a team is, if it's truly a team. A team is a reflection of culture. And culture is a reflection of messages. if people buy into them. So this is the importance of messaging, and messaging consistently, and messaging correctly. Because once you get the buy-in, then you have a culture. And once you have a culture, you outlive and you outperform talent. And this is really one of our goals, is that it doesn't matter what our opponents do in terms of recruiting talent. Our culture will supersede that in the long run every time. And so this is where we establish our goals, is to achieve a culture.
Thank you. My last question would be, while we're trying to build teams and cultures that outlive us, you talked about your own journey of finding exercising passion, transformation. When you look back now and reflect, what is it? What is your why? Why do you do what you do? What is the messages you want to personally leave behind and plant into the current team, the current coaching staff, maybe even the alumni and the people who watch the games?
I think that's a really easy question for me. Passion. Passion for the game of basketball. It's never let me down. I've let it down many times. It's never hurt me. And some time ago, you know, I eventually got to that point in my life where I was able to shed almost all the remnants of arrogance. And it's a good feeling when you can finally get rid of that, because now I'm not trying to leave a legacy. I'm not trying to clone myself with assistant coaches. I tell my players, I've told the media, I'll tell you, I don't have a win-loss record. I've just been a piece of many teams, and, you know, perhaps sometimes a pivotal piece and other times not so much. Sometimes a successful piece and other times not so much. So what keeps me going, the why, is very simply that if I stopped, you know, I'd probably just go to bed and close my eyes and maybe not get up. You know?
Be you.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that would be a good thing. Maybe it's time to transform myself into something other than a basketball entity. But, and you know, of course, we all are many facets in our personality. But, you know, why do I seek to be better at this thing called coaching every day, is because I have a passion for the game, and I have a passion for my players. And I wish I had that same passion for other aspects of life. I wish I was probably a more well-rounded person. And I have other people to thank for instance, for my ability to sit in front of you and speak. Now, you know, and speak with some intellect and authority. I thank my dad for that. You know, my dad used to get me every night, every single night, go get the dictionary. And open it up. Point to a word. What is it? I have to read the word, use it in a sentence, read the meaning, and he made me speak all the time. Well, that wasn't something I ever desired to do, but it was a byproduct of a process that he had in his mind. So, yes, there's many facets to our character and personality, but what drives me is my love for the game.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Coach Tab, for the insightful and personal story so far. Now, at this point, let me, please allow me to ask questions specific to the last season. The Ateneo winning the three-peat. And, of course, you went undefeated, a historical year for Ateneo. So I will be asking sets of questions on a particular leadership principle to guide you, but you don't really need to answer each one. No, it's just a guide. No? So let's start off with the principle of beginning with an end in mind. What was the team's mindset entering the season? Was the three-peat and the dominance going undefeated, shared, and really consciously targeted at the beginning of the season? Or is it just a product of a culture you built starting in 2016?
It definitely wasn't a focal point of who we professed to be. Certainly, young men, young basketball players, young sportsmen dream. And they dream of greatness, they dream of success for their team, and the ultimate dream is to be a champion, and the ultimate is to not lose any games. But as I said before, it isn't our professed goal. It isn't something that we allow to be spoken about. And when you say at the start, how do we start our season? We start literally 48 hours after the end of our previous season, whatever that season happens to be. So I tell the players, I said, you know, those of you that are graduating, you can enjoy this as long as you want, but stay away from me. And I tell the ones that are going to return, you have 48 hours. Knock yourself out. This is yours. You own this for this 48 hours. After 48 hours, you start to become a new team. We don't allow ourselves to be called defending champions. To me, there's no such term. There's no validity in that term because it's a new team. It has different players, and it must, from day one, begin to establish its own identity. We do want carryover in culture, so leadership is extremely important because that's what the leader's most important function is to preserve culture. And of course they do that in very specific ways with very specific messages. And so our leaders must be, our captains, our team leaders must be good communicators. They must believe in themselves. They must have an authority about their presence. And we're always striving to build that in our players and identify that in some players who already have elements of that. But it is, you know, we are not defending champions. It is the next year's team, and it is a byproduct of culture and not an identified goal to talk about and to work towards. We literally break it down to, as I say to the players before most practices, what are you here for today, personally? And every player should have, I'm here today to work on court vision. I'm here today to run my lanes, make my cuts faster. I'm here today to work on my follow-through and my shot. Every player should have 2 or 3 weaknesses in their mind that they are at practice to work on. And this is how we change habits. This is how we develop professional basketball players.
Yeah, in your 3 years, with Ateneo, what was more challenging? Building up at the start, setting up the standards, creating a winning culture, or the ability to maintain that culture? So how is it different when you were at your first year and now you're already at 4th year?
Building is much more difficult because there's a much more active role for the coaches in the building of it. The maintaining of it is much more the players' role. It is truly the players' team. They are responsible for it. Our job as coaches is to hold them accountable to those things that, you know, we believe will continue the success or further build the success. And so we are mentors, we are disciplinarians, and we are overseers. But in the beginning, we were very, very much academicians. We were teachers and it was a process where we learned by our mistakes as well. But we were in the process of learning and teaching and learning and teaching and developing a culture. And it is, you know, we believe it is that culture that is the basis of succeeding. And we believe that that culture belongs to the players.
Let's proceed with the value of chemistry and having fun. So how important is chemistry or the shared culture in a high-performing team? Can a group of highly skilled individuals form a team not like each other or dislike each other, but still win?
We have, again, very defined approaches to that. So our expressed goal for our players is, and I would suggest that this is a great corporate strategy as well, but our professed goal is that they be selfish, number one, and that they, first of all, understand that God created a perfect creature in them, and they have spent 17, 18 years finding as many flaws as humanly possible. You know, this is what humans do. And so now we try to create an environment where they seek to eradicate those flaws, eradicate them in terms of basketball players and eradicate them in terms of human beings. And we preach this, we message this constantly. And then, as I said, I didn't really tell you what happens after June or after May. And then we have a meeting. Well, we have a little Come Home to Jesus meeting in a place called Bel Air, where we take the team and we do everything short of crucifying them. We use very much a U.S. Marine Corps approach of break the individual and get the individual to recommit himself through failure, because you can't do it alone, recommit himself to his teammates. And the message that goes along with that is we say very simply, you've spent 4 or 5 months building this basketball player. What are you going to do with it now? We ask that question directly and pointedly. What are you going to do with it now? And wouldn't it be a great idea to give a gift of what you have become, of what you have built? And who can you give that gift to? Well, who better than, first of all, your teammates, because they're in the process of giving you what they have built. And then beyond that, the people that love you, the people that vicariously enjoy success through your performance. And so I think it's noble, and I think nobility is a great human quality, to be selfish in pursuit of greatness and to be generous in the sharing of, it isn't greatness at that point, but improvement. And so that's how we encourage a chemistry that seems to have impact on performance. And we will continue to believe that until we're proven wrong.
Yeah, you shared about Baler, and we read that.
Maybe I shouldn't have.
Yeah, that's where we read that in Baler there is the Bebop, Blue Eagles Band of Brothers came about, and also the Next Man Up. These values or this culture, did they arise accidentally or really deliberately?
As I said, I'm about 40 years into this business myself, and there's a lot of learnings that take place. If you just relax and open your eyes and open your mind, you'll learn. It's hard not to, unless you're closed-minded. And so, very interesting book, if any of you ever want to read it. It's called The Junction Boys. And it was written about a very famous football coach in America, Coach Paul Bear Bryant, coached at University of Alabama. But before that, he coached at Texas A&M, and before that, Kentucky. And he had some very clear philosophies on how to build character and how to build teams. And so, Bebob was by design. And, Bebob comes from the Shakespearean play, and, we few and then we talk about bleeding, you know, literally bleeding for your brothers. And that's the key element, you know, because what is blood? What is our blood? Blood is our essence. Without it, we don't live. We lose our essence when we bleed out. And so, you know, that giving of your essence is what Bebop is all about. And then next man up simply comes from the institutional failure that we create in Bel-Air. And when I say institutional, we have tasks, let's just call them tasks, that we know are beyond the capabilities of our players. We know that. It's impossible for them to succeed. And it is, you know, in the moment of failure that either we collectively fail or the next man up steps in. And so, you know, we need our players to understand that it isn't about them individually. We need them to understand that. We need them to look in the mirror and see a failure. Because we need them then to have the confidence of character to look to their left and to look to their right and say, all right, here's the guy that's going to give me CPR, get me back on my feet, get me performing again. And maybe he's going to do that with me by picking me up, or maybe he's just going to step in and perform while I recover. Either way, there is an interdependence that we seek to create. And so that is the next man up strategy. I don't think you can do that in your corporate environments. I would highly discourage it. But if you want to try, we can consult you.
Yeah. One of the things that make the Ateneo community really proud and really happy is how your teams were able to maximize what the community has through Ateneans in spirit, or what we say, real students studying and playing for the team, the likes of Nieto brothers, sila Gian Mamuyak, Tredy Ravena, and Isaac Go. Student athletes being developed and actually being able to succeed. So you showed that while natural skills and talents are really critical in building a winning team, you veered away from the trap of just recruiting every good player out there. So we saw how Isaac Go developed his three-point shooting. We saw how Gian became the most ferocious defender or stopper in UAAP. No, so what is your stand or your principle in terms of development and training? On the other hand, getting someone out who's already ready.
We were talking about this beforehand back in the holding room. We do not play any games with this. Ateneo is an academic institution, and it's a proud academic institution. And every student that goes there should be held to academic standards, and we don't believe any differently. I'll go ahead and tell the same story because I was sitting in the holding room with 4 faculty members. And just to give you an insight into how I think about it, because I went to a great university in Notre Dame. And even though I wasn't the most diligent student, I was a good student. I wish I had been more diligent, but maybe not. Maybe I would have been a better accountant, and then I wouldn't have had the life that I've had. But we were talking about this element of academia in our world, and the first day that I was hired and we were talking about academics, I said to Father Nemi, I said, Father, I would love the opportunity to be able to call the professors up where the students were in their classes and discuss their academic process, the progress, and identify any potential problems and then take action. Father Nemi said, no. You won't be allowed to put any pressure on the faculty. And I said, no, you have me wrong. I don't want to put any pressure on the faculty. I 100% support the faculty. I 100% believe the faculty should do, excuse my slightly colorful language, should do exactly what I ask the players to do, and that's do their damn job. And that doesn't mean give concessions. That means instruct. It means demand. It means hold accountable, which is what we want to do with the players. And so, you know, to varying degrees, you're right, you highlight some nice academic success stories, but we have others. We have, you know, and I don't, look, the players make their own bed, they sleep in it. You know, Rafi Verano and Jolo Mendoza didn't play this year, and that hurt our team because they weren't available to play because they were on academic probation. They still can't train. They can't train until the end of the academic school year, and that's provided they meet the QPI, which allows them back in the team. If they don't, you won't see them in an Ateneo uniform again. And nobody should be asking any favors for these young men. And it is especially difficult when they train from 5:30 to 9 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, another 3-hour training session, and that's every week. It is difficult. It is an extra demand. But this comes down to why we believe we can demand this of our players. And if there is, I mean, all of you are either in the workforce, I'm talking mostly to the MBA students now, or vying to enter the workforce. Maybe those of you on this side are the employers, the managers. There's nothing I can say that is more important when you seek to hire or when you seek to recruit than character. Nothing. You can roll out all the talent in the world, and I will beat your talent because I will have character, and with character we can mold greatness. And it might just be one facet of them as a person that is great, but I dare say talent almost always falls short of greatness because there's too much built-in ability and not enough acquired ability. And with character, and if you do your due diligence when you're recruiting, which we do, with character, you will find a willingness to be built, which is what we're looking for. And so we love our success stories. We love our students that graduate. We expect them to graduate. We expect them to be proud of their degree. We expect them to honor their degree by being good, if not great, professionals in whatever field they enter. And we put pressure on those that, you know, maybe aren't as pure in their reasons for being at Ateneo, which should be a student athlete, as they should be. And so we have that situation now. We will probably have it year after year with some. But we like to believe that because of the culture that we have, even those that stray from that path of doing their job the right way, that they will be re-corralled and put back on the pathway, and then we feel great about those success stories. And I guess one that comes to mind right away is 30 Ravenna. You know, he spent his year in purgatory, academic purgatory, and he came back a much more diligent student, and he realized that within him there was a student. There was somebody that had academic capabilities and not just basketball capabilities. And this is a real success story.
To ask my last question, on confidence and courage. So the game of basketball or sports in general are full of high pressure moments. No? So how are you able to instill self-efficacy or the belief in oneself that one will be able to accomplish the goal of winning every game no matter the situation they are at?
Well, collective confidence comes from individual confidence. And it, again, you know, maybe a reflection of my life, it is the more you fail, the less you are afraid of failure and the more prepared you are to step into that moment and succeed. Because you can't succeed if you don't put yourself in the firing line. So basketball is a great sport for players to be on teams and to hide. They hide behind high performers. We don't want any of those guys. You know, we want you to learn your own limitations by failing, and then you can broaden your limitations. You can expand them. But if you always hide, then you're never exposed. And we don't want that. So we really believe it's integral to the growth of the individual and the growth of the team that every player is put in pressure situations, pressure moments, and has to stand up and be the key performer. If you go back to a couple of years ago when we played in the Jones Cup, and you know we played Taiwan, and you know Matt Nieto took the winning shot. I think of all the players out there on the court at that moment, very few people would have thought we were going to run a play for Matt. Now, make the shot or miss the shot, it didn't matter. What mattered was what was Matt's mentality. And making the shot doesn't validate that he had the right mentality. Asking him afterwards, Matt, how did you feel in the huddle when you saw that we were going to call your number? And he said, I was ready. Well, there you know that if we really want to test Matt, we have to find an even higher pressure situation for him. But at least we know we've got one guy who, succeed or fail, was ready to be in that breach. And, you know, if you go all the way back in history, you go back to the battles on the, you know, the fields of Scotland and the fields of England and the fields of France and the shield walls and you know, how battle was done. The question was always, well, it wasn't always asked. Sometimes it was imposed. But who was going to take the center spot in the shield wall? Who was going to prevent the breach? And then who was going to step in the breach? You know, and these were how people in competitive environments were tested. And so we do the same thing. So we want to know where an individual's confidence is. And it's okay if they fail. And we want them to be honest. We want them to say, you know, Coach, man, I wasn't ready for that. Okay, let's get you ready. Let's take a step back and find another challenging scenario for you. And you go into that, and you go into it with the right attitude. That's all, just the right attitude. Again, it isn't about the result. It's about who is willing to go in there and eradicate all the distractions and be able to focus on doing the job. So if we had seen Matt shoot that shot and do something like that, it would have told us that, you know, he wasn't focused on technique and, you know, the right form, and his mind was somewhere it shouldn't be. And then we can address that. And you know, so we seek those scenarios for all of our players. We don't always find them, but somehow we expose ourselves in the heat of competition at some point, usually.
Thank you. Let's expand the conversation to the audience here and in the auditorium. If you have a question and have the courage to show up to the mic and ask it straight to the very disciplined Coach Tab, please do. If not, you can post it on Slido. www.sli.do. Enter the event code L854, and we will see it on our phones. There we go. First question.
Hi. Is this working? Good evening. Thank you so much, sir, first for that.
That was me, actually. I have that ability. I wish I could answer that question with the same authority that I've probably answered some of the other questions, because I think of maybe many of the challenges that I have had as a coach. Management of people has been one of my big challenges. And again, I would go back to my dad. My dad, you know, I was his son. I was never his friend. And, you know, that was kind of tough at times. But that was my perspective. That was, you know, how I saw how things should be. But then as I moved into coaching at a higher level, I was a little bit like a moth to a flame, because I hadn't played the game enough. I hadn't satisfied myself as a player before I went into coaching. And that wasn't my fault. That was my dad's fault. But I had to deal with that. So I wanted desperately to be one of the guys at times. I wanted to be one of the players. So how could I manage that but still have this disciplined approach that I had from the very beginning? And that was extremely difficult. And I think that I did it wrong many times. I became too close to some of my players. And I never lost the ability to discipline them, but through that fog of relationship, they lost the ability to respect me in all situations. And, you know, then I wrestled with that, because these would be close friends that I would think, well, you know, I'm the coach, you have to respect me. And the attitude would be very much, well, you know, you're one of us. Why are you going out with us after the games? Why are you hanging out with us? Why are you playing cards with us? And this is professional now. We were all pros. And I had to reconcile myself to those issues. So now I work with very young players, and I love them. I love my players. I look at them and I see the freshness of youth. I see the enthusiasm that they have for relationships with one another, and I'm extremely jealous. And I would never tell them this, so none of you mum's the word on that, right? But in all honesty, I'm extremely jealous. So I still wrestle with that. And especially, as you point out, in today's world, it's changed. People used to ask me in New Zealand, where I spent a long time coaching, what is your essential coaching philosophy? And I used to answer that question and say, I'm a relationship-based coach. And that was not a popular answer. I'm a tactician or a fundamentalist or a up-tempo coach or a defensive coach. I used to say I'm a relationship-based coach. And they would want to define that, and I would probably lie, to be honest. And I would say, I really believe that the closer I can get to my players, the better relationship I have with my players, the more I can communicate with them, the more I can squeeze the most out of them, and get the most out of the team. It sounded better than it was, so it wasn't really like that. And I made it sound more effective than it probably was. So to answer your question, I've found it easier now to take an interest in my players' lives, to understand as much as I can without becoming part of their personal life. And that's hard for me at times, and I would suspect that in your work environments that could be hard as well. And I don't really feel competent to advise. I think you have to feel your way through that. Because, the essence of every human endeavor, except as it comes to me, monks copying Bibles, is interpersonal relationships. And how well we maneuver that minefield oftentimes determines how much success we have collectively. Because we all know relationships can be the most difficult things. And they can be the most rewarding things. But they're all very fragile. So In amongst there, maybe there's some kind of answer. I'm not sure. You're welcome.
We can get one of the questions here. We have several.
You're
Yeah.
looking for the toughest one. The LaSalle question. It's there.
No, there's no
No,
there's
no,
no
no.
LaSalle question except when are you moving to the.
Who brought these green
yeah,
bottles anyway? Jeez.
We try to be ecumenical.
There's no summit around here? Yeah.
One of them asked how difficult it is to change the playing style of Filipinos, because Filipinos are really into the American one-on-one style of play.
In many cases, impossible. Very topical question. The last probably 3 practices I've been to, particularly with Coach Gabby Severino, one of my assistant coaches, we've been hammering away at this in discussion. He keeps telling me, your legacy should be to change the landscape of Filipino basketball. And I keep saying, legacy be damned, let me just coach my players. And he's saying, yes, but now you're the Gilas program director, and you're now taking the top talent in the country, and you have this profession of, in 4 years' time, this is going to become something special as a national team, something different. And so we've been discussing in detail this very thing, and it is a monster. And Debbie knows better than anybody else in the room that I'm not known for my subtlety, especially in matters related to basketball. We don't have good coaches in the Philippines. There it is, right there, at any level. Now, there are some good coaches, but as a general statement, we don't. We don't teach the game well. We rely on talent. We rely on one thing that most other countries don't have. We rely on a massive population that picks up the ball at a very early age and plays nonstop. Now, imagine that you're a military commander, right? But you can't touch any of your soldiers until they're 25. But from the time they're 1, everybody wants to throw a spear or swing a sword. And then they come to you at 25. Imagine the flaws. Imagine how many of them would be killed immediately on the battlefield by a more disciplined, well-instructed, less talented, confrontational scenario. We saw that at the World Cup. We saw Serbia beat us by 56 points, and Italy beat us by, 40-something points. Now, yes, they are more talented, but no, they do not have that much better raw materials than we do. No, they don't. They cultivate the raw materials. So the challenge isn't how do we coach players better. The challenge is how do we get away from a provincial mentality. And this was explained to me so well the other day. Philippines have been colonialized for 300 years plus, and you don't want that anymore. You don't want people from the outside coming in and telling you how to do things. No, we'll do it our way, which is fine. The PBA is a wonderful competition. The UAAP, I would say, for being so small, only 8 teams, is second to none. I mean, the NCAA competition in the States wishes that it could get 20,000 people to its games. It wishes it could do that. But the greater point is, as soon as we step off of our shores, what happens? we are exposed for our insular thinking. Now, I don't know if that's true in business. I'm no expert on that. But in basketball, where we have an unparalleled passion for the game, we set ourselves up for heartbreaking failure because we refuse to learn from superiors. We don't like to hear that word, superior. We don't like to think that there are cultures outside of ours, even though we know it in our skin. We know it, that there are superior basketball cultures, and probably in other industries and fields of endeavor. There are superior cultures out there. We don't want to hear it. Institutionally, we don't want to hear it. The resistance to me becoming the head coach of Ateneo is just one example of that. Why should we fear that which is going to improve our lives? Why should we fear that? And more importantly, why shouldn't we identify that out there, the bar is up there, and let's go jump over that bar? And we can't do it being who we are right now. But the problem is, it's generational in terms of the solution. And this was the discussion, and you guys would all know these business terms. You know, do we have to evolve this, or is there some paradigm shift that can take place to blow this mentality away and replace it overnight? Well, obviously, if we could identify what that was, and we could do that, then we could accelerate the process. And some of us with no hair and gray hair might enjoy seeing the fruits of that in a shorter time span. But the reality in human civilization is there aren't that many paradigm shifts. There's more evolution. And so the ability to make a mark in that way is probably fairly limited for me or whoever comes next or whoever comes next after next. So let's all put our heads together and think of what is that paradigm shift. Because if we can get that, then we get the wax out of everybody's ears and we start to actually work correctly. And when we work correctly, we get a better product. And our product is our players. And until we do that, our players are deficient. Not by size. Forget that. That's fake.
Yeah.
They're deficient by the player that they are. And they have been allowed to become. So, there's my diplomatic answer. You should hear the real one.
After coaching you, and we have time for really one or two more questions. Yeah, please take the mic.
Still off. Hello.
It's working now.
Thank you. Having spent time in the Philippines, what values have you seen in Filipinos, whether in sports and business, more admirable than in other countries you've coached or worked with?
I've been very, very blessed in my life to have traveled extensively on our planet. I think I've been to something like 35 to 40 countries, and I've lived in 10 different ones and coached in 10 different ones. Probably my favorite place on earth is Fiji. And yeah, it's a great Pacific Island setting with, clear water and warm sun and lots of fish to catch. And it's a lovely place. But the most endearing quality of Fiji is the people. Second to them is the Filipinos. And that's a big statement. That's a huge statement, especially when we live in a country with as many social challenges as Filipinos face, as much poverty as we have in this country, and still doesn't matter where you go. I mean, yes, bad things can happen to you anywhere, but still, you can go into the barangays and you can go into the toughest areas, and more often than not, you see smiles on the faces of people. You experience a kind word, an inquisitive nature, and I think that is a phenomenal quality in a nation. I think it's probably exploited unfairly as we export OFWs. We would love to see them treated for the quality of person that they are, rather than the price that they can be attained for. Because the people that are hiring OFWs all over the world are getting just wonderful, wonderful people in the vast majority of cases. Hardworking, kind souls, people that you enjoy being around. And that's how I see Filipinos. Within the basketball world, they're hard workers, extremely humble, coachable in most cases, education deficient as basketball players, but it doesn't take away from the wonderful qualities that they are. And I've never enjoyed coaching players as much as I have coaching Filipinos. And I said after last season, I said this was the hardest working basketball team that I ever coached. Well, I didn't create that. I just exploited that. And that's a credit. That's a credit to this culture. It's a credit to those young men, and it's a credit to their families. So I think we have a wonderful country. It's not a country without problems. But it's a country that rates extremely highly on my list of where to be's.
Thanks, Coach Tab. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for answering our questions. Our own coach has instructed us to share some points we took away and summarize. So me and Young will do that, and we will end the program. For me, just the one thing that strikes me is how sports and coaching is analogous to organizations, business, and leadership. One of them, in the end, as you said, when you're facing a problem that's institutional and great and takes generations to build, it's very difficult to change. Evolution versus paradigm shift. And they say paradigm shifts only happen in times of crises. Crises happen, and people don't like crises. People don't like things breaking. But as you said, it's in the breaking that reveals character and transformation. And maybe that's why we look for stars, business stars, sports stars, political stars, superstars, showbiz stars. We look for stars because the problems are so big, we need heroes that are larger than the problems to match them. But if we fail to find it, so it's a time of heroes. Disruption, crisis is a time of heroes. And heroes don't have to be larger than the problems. Their purpose can be larger than the problems. And the way it happens, maybe, I was about to say, maybe we need prophets, people who stick their necks out, say difficult things to wake people up. But also maybe we need coaches and people who come every day to show up, where the largeness of vision and creating change and changing things from the way they are to the way they can be and should be happens in the everyday. And sometimes it's not dramatic. It's drills. It's coming to work. It's practice. It's character. So that when the time comes and do you want the ball and can you take the pressure shot? I'm ready, fail or not, because I've done it before. So big problems, transformation, disruption, crisis, paradigm shift. Maybe the way forward is what you said, just showing up every day and putting in the work every day. And that's how character changes. That's how heroes reveal themselves.
Yeah, for me, Coach Tab, I have two. First, me as a sports fanatic also, I was really surprised. I always share this to my class, how I was amazed by Coach John Wooden. no, winningest coach in collegiate basketball in the U.S. How surprising he was because he never talked about winning in his practices, in his games. I was really surprised with how you do the same, no, same principle in the Ateneo UAAP team. Going back to fundamentals, really the basics, and then the output is having that winning team. The second is related to what we teach here in AGSB on leadership. We really believe that every leader, every hero has a development process, and you shared that a while ago. You mentioned about how your father influenced you, and how you embraced failure. So we heard it from you. You failed 8 times, but the output and the output now is really the winning team. Yeah.
Thank you very much, both of you. You did a great job, and I appreciate this opportunity, and I appreciate you guys very much. And I'd like to just leave you with a parting thought that sort of near and dear to me, especially in Asia. I know that probably if all of you had the opportunity to come up and send me off tonight with a word, many of you would say what? You'd say, good luck for the coming season. Good luck for this year. Good luck in your coaching. And I would take offense to that. Debbie and I go around and around a little bit on this one. I don't believe in luck. I don't believe it exists. I think if we boil luck down to its essential elements, what we're really talking about is some cosmic force that people seem to believe in, and if it's good luck, it's that force that descends upon you at the last moment before you're about to fail and pushes you across the finish line successfully. Or if it's bad luck and you're about to succeed, it somehow grabs your shirt and pulls you back from succeeding. And I believe in hard work. And yeah, there's a saying, the harder you work, the luckier you get. Well, I prefer just to eliminate the concept of luck from my life. And I prefer to maintain that there are only 2 forces that significantly impact the outcomes in my life. One is God. And He's going to give me whether I like it or not, what I need. And the other is what God made. And that's me. And He gave me the ability to succeed. He gave me the ability to strive, to dream, to exert immense effort. He gave me the weaknesses to be lazy, to blame, to see others as reasons why or why not. But He didn't give me luck. He gave me, and He gave me His promises. So, for me, I wouldn't, and I'm sitting in a room where many of us are blessed. I would say most of us are blessed for what we have today and who we are today. So I'm sitting in a room where I would offer you not good luck. I would offer you the wish of opportunity, but I think you have that. I think you have that. So I'm not a big believer in motivation either. I believe that we have to find it within ourselves to pursue what we want. So there's not a lot that I can offer you as a parting statement other than were I given the opportunity to work with you every day, I would tell you as often as I could remind myself to tell you that you are quite incredible. Every one of you. No matter your age, your lack of age, no matter your stature or status, you are an amazing individual. And you have what it takes. And with industry, personal industry, with reflection, and with a kind heart, knowing that we work amongst other people, whatever success you dream about is not outside of your grasp. And if you believe that, and if you more than believe that, if you know that, then what are we doing? Why are we sitting around listening to me? So, don't wish me good luck, because that would be an insult. You would be telling me I'm not good enough. And I don't want your insults. When we lose a game sometime in the future, I'll get plenty of those, trust me. What I want is for everybody to strive to be better at your best and to pursue your best, and the best of who you are and the best in what you do. And if you do that, we can eliminate this foolish concept of luck. We can just have a lot more handshakes and a lot more trophies and a lot more well dones. So God bless you all. Thank you so very much for tonight. And on behalf of our basketball team, our basketball program, of which Debbie is an integral part, so Deb, thank you for being here and your support. We say thank you to all of you. And hopefully we'll see you at the UAAP games. Take care.
Dean Rudy, as is our tradition, to show our simple appreciation for everything you've shared, not just the words, but really the spirit behind it. Dean Rudy will share some things that are important to us. One is a jacket. That means you're part of our team now. And
I don't know why we have jackets in the Philippines. And you guys, I get more annoyed when people say, oh, it's cold today, than anything else. It is never, ever, ever. And then they go, well, but in Baguio it is. No, it is not. Baguio's hot too. And if it's not hot, it's warm. So, but I travel, and I'm proud to be an Atenean, so the jacket will be a welcome
when the air
addition.
conditioning is strong, you can show that you're part of the Graduate School of Business family.
Thank you all very much. Now I'm more appropriate.
Thank you very much. Again, last round of applause for Coach Tab Baldwin. Oh, photo with the crowd. Sorry, the photographer wants to take a picture from here. So if you can stand up, sit down. You can stand up, try to compress. We'll have Coach Baldwin in front, everybody in the back. Okay, there's a camera.